The shift and the deviation, and we have an exciting hearing today on NASA's efforts to save the world. Literally far beyond Mars, in the quiet between worlds, a single object began to drift from perfection. 3 Atlas, a fragment from another star, had been tracing a flawless arc through sunlight and vacuum, a path predicted to the last decimal until that precision failed. Its orbit bent almost imperceptibly, a curve shifting where none should move, a silence changing shape. Across NASA's tracking networks, the deviation appeared as a faint correction in the void, subtle yet absolute. There was no explosion, no collision, no noise at all, only the measured truth that an interstellar body had altered its course. The shift, when motion meets prediction, the two are supposed to agree. Every orbit drawn by gravity obeys that rule until one doesn't, at perihelion. When 3 Atlas came closest to the Sun, the line of its path fractured ever so slightly from the path that mathematics had written for it. A deviation appeared. Not a burst, not a lurch, but a steady slide from certainty itself. At a distance of 1.36 astronomical units, sunlight is intense enough to vaporize volatile ice and press outward on dust grains. Those pressures are well known, predictable, modeled into every trajectory. Yet even after those were subtracted, a residual motion remained. The object was drifting, not freely, but with purpose, as though nudged by a continuous, unseen force across stacked frames, 134 in total. The offset repeated. Each recalibration brought the same conclusion. The predicted coordinates and the real position no longer touched. The object had changed course. It was still within the same orbital plane, but its geometry was shifting outward and slightly aside away from the Sun's grip. In the precision world of astrometry, such a displacement is enormous. Over days, it translates to km; over weeks to tens of thousands. The motion is too coherent to be random, too consistent to be an illusion. What emerged in the data was not turbulence or instability. It was direction. 3 Atlas was no longer following the curve written by gravity alone. Its path had become its own proof of motion beyond gravity. In the discipline of celestial mechanics, the smallest acceleration tells the largest truth. The deviation of 3 Atlas was measured at roughly 910 to the power of -7 astronomical units per day squared. The kind of number that hides meaning until time reveals its consequence. Over the span of a month, that gentle push would shift the object by a distance nearly equal to 10 Earth-Radi. Tiny by cosmic scale, but enough to redraw its trajectory line by line. The physics of motion 12 components defined the motion. A radial acceleration of about 135 kilometers per day squared directed away from the Sun, and a transverse component of roughly 60 kilometers per day squared sliding sideways along its orbital path. Together they form a vector of quiet insistence, continuous and stable. It is not noise. It is not computational residue. It is a force recorded across instruments identical in sign and persistence. In theory, gravity alone should describe everything that moves within the Sun's domain. In practice, 3 Atlas has proven otherwise. Its acceleration lies within the orbital plane, confined and deliberate, as if a new term had been added to the equations that govern motion. The gravitational model remains intact, but it is no longer sufficient. Something else is present, exerting a push so faint it would take 1,000,000 such forces to equal Earth's gravity, yet strong enough to shift an interstellar body off its predicted path. This is what altering course means in the language of the cosmos. Not defiance, not malfunction, but data showing the universe acting with one more variable than we knew, quantifying the shift. Precision turned a subtle drift into an undeniable event. The acceleration of 3 Atlas measured at roughly 910 to the power of -7 astronomical units per day squared is not an estimate but a recorded phenomenon. Across the vacuum of space, that faint pressure accumulates, displacing the object by nearly 65,000 kilometers over a single month. In orbital mechanics, that distance is monumental. It's the difference between prediction and truth. The first verifiable correction to a trajectory once thought absolute. The data reveals two distinct components. The radial term, about 135 kilometers/day², pushes directly away from the Sun, while a transverse term of roughly 60 kilometers/day² slides the object sideways. Together they form a single vector contained entirely within the orbital plane, constant through every frame and rotation. That stability eliminates randomness. No flicker, no fluctuation, no decay, just a continuous measured push. The Sun's gravitational acceleration at this distance is roughly 0.6 meters per second squared. The new force is 100,000 times weaker, yet its persistence is enough to change geometry itself. Over time, this invisible thrust builds a second path beside the first. The original orbit remained pure and mathematical. The new one runs parallel, drawn by an unseen hand. The shift is not chaos or error. Its movement defined by precision, a demonstration that even forces too small to feel can sculpt the architecture of motion. Gravity has not failed. It has been joined. Geometry within the orbital plane. The direction of that motion tells its own story. Both acceleration components, radial and transverse, stay locked within the orbital plane of 3 Atlas, forming a shape of perfect coherence. The radial vector lifts the orbit outward, countering solar pull. The transverse vector extends the path forward, adding subtle energy to its escape. No perpendicular tilt, no deviation out of plane, only a graceful translation, as though the entire orbit has been lifted and shifted, still bound by symmetry, but now offset from prediction. If surface outgassing caused the thrust, the direction would change with rotation, flickering as sunlight exposed new regions. Instead, the vector remains constant. The absence of oscillation implies uniformity, a mechanism acting steadily across the surface or through its core. Rotation does not disturb it. Illumination does not vary it. The orbit's shape remains hyperbolic, its future unchanged, but its coordinates now belong to two realities. One gravitational, one slightly freer. Viewed through geometry, the evidence feels almost architectural. Two identical curves, one drawn by mathematics, one traced by nature, diverging by thousands of kilometers, yet never breaking alignment. The altered course is not disorder, but discipline. A shift so exact it seems deliberate, though no design is assumed. Within that narrow plane of motion, 3I Atlas has proven that precision can hide mystery, and that even in the realm of perfect equations, the universe still reserves the right to move differently. The mystery of cause-eth physics of the push. Every motion begins with a question of cause. In the vacuum of space, no object moves without a reason. For 3I Atlas, that reason should have been sunlight alone, heating its surface, boiling trapped ices, pushing it ever so slightly outward. That process is ancient and familiar. It gives comets their tails and comas, their vapor trails of gas and dust. But this time, the pattern failed. The force on 3I Atlas was not erratic or pulsed. It did not fade with rotation or sunlight. It remained steady, directional, and calm. A propulsion that did not behave like a comet's breath. If sublimation truly drives it, then the physics becomes extraordinary. The measured acceleration 910 to the power of -7 astronomical units per day² means that every second molecules would need to escape at hundreds of meters AUS, carrying away enough mass to have the object's total weight in 6 months. A tenth of its body would vanish in the time it takes to cross the inner solar system. Yet, when telescopes looked, they saw no veil of vapor, no spreading halo. The brightness rose, yes, but the shape stayed sharp, a point of light unblurred by outgassing. It's a contradiction that feels almost deliberate. The math insists on mass loss. The imagery denies it. Either the gas escaping is made of transparent material invisible to standard instruments, or the push originates from something deeper, a pressure not on the surface but within the structure itself. A process that releases force without light, without cloud, without sound. The universe has many ways of hiding power, and this may be one of them. What matters is not what we see, but what the orbit proves. 3 Atlas is moving under its own correction, as if a second law of motion has quietly joined gravity's domain. The persistence of motion forces in nature rarely stay still. Solar wind shifts. Heat fades. Outgassing flickers with rotation. Everything that moves tends to pulse, weaken, or scatter. 3. Atlas does none of that. Its acceleration holds the same direction, the same magnitude, the same alignment through every observation window. No wobble, no noise, no decay. A perfect repeating vector as if frozen into the object's geometry. At first glance, this might sound like stability, a mechanical coincidence of surface and sunlight. But the persistence is too pure. For such uniform motion, every part of the surface would need to release gas at precisely the same rate, compensating for rotation automatically. The heating pattern would have to remain fixed, synchronized with its spin. Nature can mimic precision, but rarely to this extent. What we see instead is endurance, an effect that refuses to break rhythm. This is where the alteration becomes undeniable. A trajectory cannot stay displaced for weeks unless the force behind it is continuous. The same vector recorded day after day, confined within the orbital plane, defines a kind of cosmic discipline. It is not chaos. It is order, silent, mathematical, unwavering. 3. Atlas is no longer simply responding to the sun. It's maintaining its own motion through the void, balancing an invisible equation that does not fluctuate with heat or time. There's something unnerving about such steadiness. It feels engineered, though no claim is made of that. It feels alive, though it is likely not. But for the first time, an interstellar object has shown a sustained consistent thrust with no visible source. And that is enough. Light and color in a universe ruled by gravity. A steady, invisible push is not just an anomaly. It is an announcement. Light that shouldn't exist. The first sign that something was deeply wrong came from its brightness. As 3 Atlas closed in on perihelion, the light it reflected grew at a rate that no natural model could replicate. Observatories equipped with instruments aboard Stereo and GOES 19 all recorded the same phenomenon. A surge in intensity scaling with the sun's distance raised to the power of -7.5, far steeper than the standard cometry relationship. Normally, brightness increases with the square of sunlight or for highly active comets to the 4th power. But this was energy amplification beyond expectation. In simple terms, the closer the object came to the sun, the faster it brightened, as if radiance itself were being manufactured from motion. The pattern wasn't chaotic or explosive. The luminosity curve followed mathematical precision and broken through days of observation. And yet something was missing. A comet brightening that fast should be shedding mass at catastrophic rates, producing plumes of dust and vapor large enough to scatter sunlight into a broad coma. No telescope saw that. Instead, the image remained compact, star-like, and sharply defined. The brightness grew, but the outline stayed still. That contradiction turned the light into evidence. Either the energy release came from a process invisible to optical instruments, or it originated not in scattered particles but on or within the object itself. This is where the story of motion and light became one. The increase in brightness aligned exactly with the period when 3I Atlas began to drift from its gravitational path. A stronger push, a stronger glow. Two expressions of a single process acting quietly in the same moment. The universe rarely gives its clues in isolation, and this time light marked the path of a force still unnamed. What we witness in that glow is not spectacle, but signal, an interstellar object, rewriting its trajectory and illuminating its defiance. At the same time, the orbit changed, and the sky grew brighter to make sure we would not miss it. The blue shift color turned the mystery from anomaly to impossibility. At perihelion 3I Atlas reflected light bluer than the sun. That sentence alone violates every rule of reflected astronomy. A comet's dust should rain sunlight, not reverse it. Surfaces chilled to 250 Kelvin should absorb high-energy wavelengths, not emit them. Yet instruments tracking the interstellar visitor registered a distinct spectral shift toward blue. Subtle at first, then unmistakable. This wasn't calibration error or scattering noise. The data held under every filter and comparison. Whatever sunlight touched its surface, it came back transformed, stripped of warmth, sharpened into cooler fire. One possible cause hides in chemistry. Ionized carbon monoxide can glow blue when its electrons are excited by ultraviolet radiation. But even that explanation strains logic because such ionization requires energy levels higher than those available at the distance of 1.36 astronomical units. The readings from multiple spacecraft confirmed that the tone persisted through rotation and distance, steady and blinking indifferent to angle. This object cooled and turned electric. The same constancy that marked its non-gravitational acceleration marked its light. Both were directional. Both were deliberate. Both ignored the variance nature usually supply. To be colder than ice and shine bluer than a star defies expectation. Yet 3I Atlas did exactly that. It became in color and in motion an object defined by contradiction. An interstellar fragment moving faster than gravity predicts and glowing as though heat were escaping invisibly from its core. In scientific terms, the hue implies energy release. In observational terms, it makes the invisible visible. Light at shorter wavelengths carries more energy. To shift that way means to accelerate the very photons that describe you. And so through its own reflected spectrum, 3I Atlas left its confession in color. Its altered course is no longer just geometry. It is wavelength. A physical reminder that even in the coldest regions of physics, the universe still finds a way to burn blue, redefining prediction, reading the predictable. In the language of celestial mechanics, every body has a future that can be calculated. Once its orbit is known, its path through space becomes a certainty. Numbers replacing mystery. For centuries, that principle has been enough. Planets, comets, asteroids, each submits to the same mathematics. Their movements traceable long before they occur. 3 Atlas has broken that quiet rule. Its deviation may be small in distance, only tens of thousands of km. But in theory, it is enormous because it means prediction no longer guarantees position. It means that even under the full authority of the sun, motion is not perfectly obedient. When a trajectory refuses to close on its own equations, physicists turn to error analysis, sensor bias, calibration drift, instrumental glare, all were tested. All failed to explain the shift. What remained was simple. The object itself had moved differently. This recognition reduces precision. The gravitational model of the solar system, once a clockwork machine of immaculate predictability, now includes a term for uncertainty, not chaos. Just an admission that some forces are smaller than we can see but large enough to matter. The displacement of 3I Atlas is proof that even in a realm ruled by constants, there is room for correction. This is not just a revision of orbit tables. It's a change in philosophy. Space has shown once again that data decides truth, not theory. The laws that govern comets and asteroids are unchanged, but they are no longer exclusive. Gravity still commands, yet it is not alone. The universe in one quiet measurement has reminded its observers that even the cleanest equations have edges left to discover. 3I Atlas has not undone Newton or Einstein. It has simply drawn a faint precise line beyond them. The final path by late October, the analysis was complete. The deviation was confirmed, quantified, and entered into orbital records. 3I Atlas had altered course. Not through collision, not through error, but through a sustained non-gravitational force that no instrument could see directly. The shift amounted to a small change in angle, a quiet redirection through millions of kilometers of empty space. Yet in that shift lies a transformation of understanding. The interstellar visitor did not shatter theory. It refined it, forcing the laws of motion to accommodate something smaller, quieter, and just as real. The measurements tell the story with elegance. A radial acceleration away from the Sun of 135 km/day², a transverse component of 60 km/day². Together, they mark the first verified course change of an interstellar object ever observed from Earth. The numbers are modest, but their certainty is absolute. Every data set, every model, every instrument agreed. No other explanation fits. The course of 3 Atlas had shifted under a force that was not gravity. The conclusion is neither speculation nor declaration. It is record the solar system has now hosted an event where motion disobeyed prediction in measurable silence. The object continues on its outbound trajectory, still bright, still blue, still defined by what it refuses to explain. Its altered course stands as a notation in the universe's own archive, a reminder that discovery often begins not with the spectacular, but with the subtle, the decimal that will not disappear. And so the observation ends as simply as it began, with data that does not lie. The orbit changed, the sky took notice, and physics, once certain, made room for one more truth. That's it for today. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content on 3 Atlas.